92nd Street Y online media is made possible by the generous support of listeners like you. This program, part of the Unterberg Poetry Center's 75 at 75 project, features W. H. Auden reading from his work. It was recorded on January 22, 1955, before a live audience at New York's 92nd Street Y.
Ladies and gentlemen, on previous occasions I've read here, I've made the point of reading for a bit and making breaks because I think it is physically impossible to listen to anyone reading aloud too long. I understand I have to make a break fairly soon to benefit any people who arrive late, which I will make. But apart from that, I shall make two breaks in a few minutes. Well, I would like to start with a cycle of 7 poems with the general title of Bucolics, because they all concern the relation of man to nature. The first one is called Winds, the next one is called Woods, the next one is called Mountains, and so on. Well, the first one is Winds. Deep below our violences, quite still, lie our first dad, his watch, and many little maids. But the boneless winds that blow round law court and temple recall to Metropolis that Pliocene Friday when, at his holy insufflation, had he picked a teleos or an arthropod to inspire, would our death also have come? One bubble-brained creature said, I am loved, therefore I am. And well by now might the lion be lying down with the kid, had he stuck to that logic. Winds make weather. Weather is what nasty people are nasty about, and the nice show a common joy in observing. When I seek an image for our authentic city, across what brigs of dread, down what gloomy galleries as we stagger or crawl before we may cry, oh look. I see old men in hallways tapping their barometers, or a lawn over which the first thing after breakfast a paterfamilias hurries to inspect his rain gauge. Winds make goddess of winds and wisdom, when on some windless day of dejection, unable to name or to structure, your poet with bodily tics, scratching, tapping his teeth, tugging the lobe of an ear, unconsciously invokes you. Show your good nature, allow rooster or whistling maid to fetch him Arthur O'Bower. Then, if moon-faced nonsense, that erudite forger, stalk through the 7 kingdoms, set your poplars a shiver to warn your clerk lest he die like an old believer to some spurious reading. And in all winds, no matter which of your 12 he may hear, equinox gales at midnight howling through marram grass, or a faint susurration of pines on a cloudless afternoon in midsummer, let him feel you present, that every verbal rite may be fittingly done, and done in anamnesis of what is excellent, yet a visible creature, earth, sky, a few dear names. Then, the next one is called Woods. I see some people have got, I've got laryngitis myself. Sylvan meant savage in those primal woods Piero di Cosimo so loved to draw, where nudes, bears, tigers, sows with women's heads, mounted and murdered and ate each other raw. nor thought the lightning-kindled bush to tame, but, flabbergasted, fled the useful flame. Reduced to patches owned by hunting squires of villages with ovens and a stocks, they whispered still of most unsocial fires. Though crown and mitre warned their silly flocks, the pasture's humdrum rhythms to approve, and to abhor the license of the grove. Guilty intention still looks for a hotel that wants no details and surrenders none. A wood is that, and throws in charm as well, and many a semi-innocent undone has blamed its nightingales, who round the deed sang with such sweetness of a happy greed. Those birds, of course, did nothing of the sort. And as for sylvan nature, if you take a snapshot at a picnic, oh, how short and lower ordersy the gang will look by those vast lives that never took another, and are not scared of God's ghosts or stepmother. Among these coffins of its by and by, the public cannot on the coast, bridle its skirt and bargain-chasing eye. And where should an austere philologist relax but in the very world of shade from which the matter of his field was made? Old sounds re-educate an ear grown coarse, as Pan's green father suddenly raps out a burst of undecipherable Morse, and cuckoos mock in Welsh, and doves create in rustic English over all they do to rear their modern family of two. Now here, now there, some loosened element, a fruit in vigor or a dying leaf, utters its private idiom for dissent, and late man, listening through his latter grief, hears, close or far, the oldest of his joys, exactly as it was, the water noise. A well-kept forest begs Our Lady's grace. Someone is not disgusted, or at least is laying bets upon the human race, retaining enough decency to last. The trees encountered on a country stroll reveal a lot about that country's soul. A small grove massacred to the last ash, an oak with heart rot, give away the show. This great society is going smash. They cannot fool us with how fast they go, how much they cost each other and the gods. A culture is no better than its woods. Then the next one is called Mountains. I know a retired dentist who only paints mountains, but the masters seldom care that much, who sketch them in beyond a holy face or a highly dangerous chair, while a normal eye perceives them as a wall between worse and better, like a child scolded in France who wishes it were crying on the Italian side of the Alps. Caesar does not rejoice when high ground makes a darker map, nor does Madame. Why should they? A serious being cries out for a gap. And it is curious how often in steep places you meet someone short who frowns, a type you catch beheading daisies with a stick. Small crooks flourish in big towns, but perfect monsters, remember Dracula, are bred on crags in castles. Those unsmiling parties, clumping off at dawn in the gear of their mystery for points up, are a bit alarming. They have the balance, nerve, and habit of the spiritual, but what God does their order serve? A civil man is a citizen. Am I to see in the Lake District then another bourgeois invention like the piano? Well, I won't. How can I, when I wish I stood now on the platform at Penrith, Zurich, or any junction at which you leave the express for a local that swerves off soon into a cutting. Soon tunnels begin, red farms disappear, hedges turn to walls, cows become sheep, you smell peat or pine wood, you hear your first waterfall. And what looked like a wall turned out to be a world with measurements of its own and a style of gossip. To manage the flesh, when angels of ice and stone stand over her day and night, who make it so plain they detest any kind of growth, does not encourage euphemisms for the effort. Here, wayside crucifixes bear witness to a physical outrage, and serenades, too, stick to bare fact. Oh, my girl has a goiter, I've a hole in my shoe. Dower, still a fine refuge. That boy behind his goats has the round skull of a clam that fled with bronze before a tougher metal. And that quiet old gentleman with the cheap room at the Black Eagle used to own 3 papers, but is not received in society now. These farms can always see a panting government coming. I'm Nordic myself, but even so, I'd much rather stay where the nearest person who could have me hung is some ridges away. To be sitting in privacy, like a cat on the warm roof of a loft, where the high-spirited sun of some gloomy town comes sprinting down through a green croft bright with flowers, laid out in exquisite splodges like a Chinese poem, while, near enough, a real darling is cooking a delicious lunch, would keep me happy for, what, 5 minutes? For an uncat-like creature who's gone wrong, 5 minutes on even the nicest mountain is awfully long. Then the next one is called lakes. A lake allows an average father walking slowly to circumvent it in an afternoon, or any healthy mother to halloo the children back to her bedtime from their games across. Anything bigger than that, like Michigan or Baikal, though potable, is an estranging sea. Lake folk require no fiend to keep them on their toes. They leave aggression to ill-bred romantics who duel with their shadows over blasted heaths. A month in a lacustrine atmosphere would find the fluvial rivals waltzing, not exchanging the rhyming insults of their great-great-uncles. No wonder Christendom did not get really started, till, scarred by torture, white from caves and jails, her pensive chiefs converged on the Ascanian lake, and by that stork-infested shore invented the life of Godhead, making Catholic the figure of 3 small fishes in a triangle. Sly foreign ministers should always meet beside one, for whether they walk Widdershins or diesel, its path will yoke their shoulders to one liquid center, like 2 old donkeys pumping as they plod. Such physical compassion may not guarantee a marriage for their armies, but it helps. Only a very wicked or conceited man, about to sink somewhere in mid-Atlantic, could think Poseidon's frown was meant for him in person. But it is only human to believe the little lady of the glacier lake has fallen in love with the rare bather whom she drowns. The drinking water of the city, where one panics at nothing noticing how real one is, may come from reservoirs whose guards are all too conscious of being followed. Webster's cardinal saw in a fish pool something horrid with a hay rake. I know a Sussex hammer pond like that. A haunted lake is sick, though. Normally, they doctor our tactile fevers with a visual world where beaks are safe are dumb like boughs, and faces safe like houses. The water scorpion finds it quite unticklish, and if it shudders slightly when caressed by boats, it never asks for water or a loan. Liking one's nature, as lake lovers do, benign, goes with a wish for savage dogs and man-traps. One fall, one dispossession is enough, I'm sorry. Why should I give Lake Eden to the nation just because every mortal Jack and Jill has been the genius of some amniotic mere? It is unlikely I shall ever keep a swan or build a tower on any small tombolo. But that's not going to stop me wondering which sort of lake I would decide on if I should. Moraine, Pot, Oxbow, Glyn Sink, Piedmont, Dimple. Just reeling off their names is ever so comfy. And then the next one is called Islands. Old saints on millstones float with cats to islands out at sea, whereon no female pelvis can threaten their agape. Beyond the long arm of the law, close to a shipping road, pirates in their island lairs observe the pirate code. Obsession with security in sovereigns prevails. His Highness and the people both pick islands for their jails. Once, where detected worldlings now do penitential jobs, exterminated species played, who had not read their Hobbes. His continental damage done, laid on an island shelf, Napoleon has 5 years more to talk about himself. How fascinating is that class whose only member is me. Sappho, Tiberius, and I hold forth beside the sea. What is cozier than the shore of a lake turned inside out? How do all these other people dare to be about? In democratic nudity their sexes lie, except by age or weight you could not tell the keeping from the kept. They go, she goes, thou goest, I go to a mainland livelihood. Farmer and fisherman complain, the other has it good. Then, next one is plain. I can imagine quite easily ending up in a deserted port, on a derelict port on a deserted coast, cadging drinks from the unwary, a quarrelsome, disreputable old man. I can picture a second childhood in a valley, scribbling reams of edifying and unreadable verse. But I cannot see a plain without a shudder. Oh God, please, please don't ever make me live there. It's horrible to think what peaks come down to. That pecking rain and squelching glacier defeat, tall pomps of stone where goddesses lay sleeping, dreaming of being woken by some chisel's kiss. But what those blind brutes leave when they are through is nothing but a mere substance, a clay that meekly takes the potter's cup, a gravel that, as concrete, will unsex any space which it encloses. And think of growing where all else wares are equal. So long as there's a hill ridge somewhere, the dreamer can place his land of marvels. In poor valleys, orphans can head downstream to seek a million. Here, nothing points. To choose between art and science, an embryo genius would have to spin a stick. What could these farms do if set loose, but drift like clouds? What goal of unrest is there but the Navy? Romance, not in this weather, of its charmer who leads the quadrilles in Arcady, boy lord of hearts who can call their yes and no their own, would, madcap that he is, soon die of cold or sunstroke. These lives are in firmer hands. That old grim she who makes the blind dates for the hatless genera creates their country matters. Woe to the childbed, woe to the strawberries if she's in her mood. And on these attend, greedy as foul and harsher than any climate, Caesar with all his they. If a tax collector disappear in the hills, if now and then a keeper is shot in the forest, no thunder follows. But where roads run level, how swift to the point of protest strides the crowd. It hangs, it flogs, it fines, it goes. There is drink, there are wives to beat, but Zeus is with the strong. Born as a rule in some small place, an island quite often, where a smart lad can spot the bluff whence cannon will put the harbor at his mercy. But it's here they chamber with Clio. At this ditch, the Christian crossbows top the heathen scimitar. Here is a windmill whence an emperor saw his right wing crumple. Across these cabbage fields, a pretender's light horse made their final charge. If I were a plainsman, I should hate us all, from the mechanic rioting for a cheap loaf to the fastidious palate. Hate the painter who steals my wrinkles for his 12 apostles. Hate the priest who cannot even make it shower. What could I smile at as I trudged behind my harrow, but bloodshot images of rivers screaming, marbles in panic, and don't care made to care. As it is, though, I know them personally only as a landscape common to nightmares. Across them, spotted by spiders from afar, I've tried to run, knowing there was no hiding and no help. On them in brilliant moonlight I have lost my way, and stood without a shadow at the dead center of an abominable desolation, like Tarquin ravished by his post-coital sadness. Which goes to show I reason to be frightened, not of planes, of course, but of me. I should like, who wouldn't, to shoot beautifully and be obeyed. I should also like to own a cave with 2 exits. I wish I weren't so silly. Though I can't pretend to think such flats poetic, it's as well at times to be reminded that nothing is lovely, not even in poetry, that is not the case. Then the last of these is called Streams. Dear water, clear water, playful in all your streams, as you dash or loiter through life, who does not love to sit beside you, to hear you and see you, pure being, perfect in music and movement? Air is boastful at times, earth slovenly, fire rude, but you in your bearing are always immaculate, the most well-spoken of all the older servants in the household of Mrs. Nature. Nobody suspects you of mocking him, for you still use the same vocables you were using the day before that unexpected row which downed every hod on half-finished Babel, and still talk to yourself. Nowhere are you disliked. Arching your torso, you dive from a basalt sill, canter across white chalk, slog forward through red marl, the aboriginal pilgrim, at home in all sections, but for whom we should be idolaters of a single rock, kept apart by our landscapes, excluding as alien the tales and diets of all other strata. How could we love the absent one if you did not keep coming from afar, or quite directly assist as when past Isolde's tower you floated the willow pash notes of wanted Tristram. And Homo Ludens surely is your child, who make fun of our feuds by opposing identical banks, transferring the loam from Huppim to Muppim and back each time you crankle. Growth cannot add to your song. As unchristened brooks, already you whisper to ants, what as Brahma's son descending his titanic staircase into Assam, to Himalayan bears you thunder. And not even man can spoil you. His company coarsens roses and dogs, but should he herd you through a sluice to toilet a turbine, or keep you leaping in gardens for his amusement, innocent still is your outcry water, and there even to his soiled heart, raging at what it is, tells of a sort of world quite other, altogether different from this one with its envies and passports, a polis like that to which in the name of scholars everywhere, Gust from Paris pledged his allegiance as Bismarck's siege guns came within earshot. Lately, in that dale of all Yorkshire's the loveliest, where of its fell side helter-skelter Kisdenbeck jumps into swale with a boyish shouting, sprawled out on grass, I dozed for a second, and found myself following a croquet tournament in a calm enclosure with thrushes popular. Of all the players in that cool valley, the best with the mallet was my darling. While on the walls that begirdled it, wild old men hunted with spades and hammers, monomaniac each, for a megalith or a fossil, and bird watchers stalked the mossy beech woods. Suddenly, over the lawn we started to run, for lo, through the trees in a cream and golden coach, drawn by two baby locomotives, the god of mortal doting approached us, flanked by his bodyguards, those hairy armigers in green who laugh at thunderstorms and weep at a blue sky. He thanked us for our cheers of homage and promised X and Y a passion undying. With a wave of his torch, he commanded a dance. So round in a ring we flew, my dear on my right, when I awoke. But fortunate seemed that day and enlightened, fortunate seemed that day because of my dream and enlightened. And dearer water than ever your voice, as if glad, though goodness knows why, to run with the human race. Wishing, I thought, the least of men, their figures of splendor, their holy places. Right, stop for a second. Well, next thing I'm going to read is of a slightly lighter nature, and also, as I think you will see, it's a polemic poem, and therefore mustn't be taken too seriously, because it has to be taken in conjunction with an imaginary opposite view. The title comes from Shakespeare's play As You Like It, and the title is The Truest Poetry is the Most Feigning. As I say, don't take it too seriously. By all means, sing of love, but if you do, please make a rare old proper hullabaloo. When ladies ask, how much do you love me? The Christian answer is, così così. But poets are not celibate divines. Had Dante said so, who would read his lines? Be subtle, various, ornamental, clever, and do not listen to those critics ever whose crude provincial gullets crave in books plain cooking made still plainer by plain cooks, as though the muse preferred her half-wit sons. Good poets have a weakness for bad puns. Suppose your Beatrice be, as usual, late, and you would tell us how it feels to wait, You're free to think, what may be even true, you're so in love that 1 hour seems like 2. But right, as I sat listening for her call, each second longer, darker seemed than all, something like this, but more elaborate still, those reigning centuries it took to fill that quarry whence Endymion's love was torn. From such ingenious fibs are poems born. Then, should she leave you for some other guy, or ruin you with debts, or go and die, no metaphor, remember, can express a real historical unhappiness. Your tears have value if they make us gay. Oh, happy grief is all sad verse can say. The living girl's your business, and some odd sorts have been an inspiration to men's thoughts. Yours may be old enough to be your mother, or have one leg that's shorter than another, or play lacrosse, or do the modern dance. To you, that's destiny. To us, it's chance. We cannot love your love till she take on, through you, the wonders of a paragon. Sing her triumphal passage to our land, the sun her footstool, the moon in her right hand, and 7 planets blazing in her hair, queen of the night and empress of the air. Tell how our fleet by 9 king swans is led, wild geese cut magic letters overhead, and hippocampi follow in her wake with amphisbaene, gentle for her sake. Sing her descent on our exultant shore, to bless the vines and put an end to war. If, halfway through such praises of your dear, riot and shooting fill the streets with fear, and overnight, as in some terror dream, poets are suspect with the new regime, stay at your desk and hold your panic in. What you are writing can still save your skin. Resex the pronouns, add a few details, and lo, a panegyric ode which hails, how is the censor, bless his heart to know, the new pot-bellied generalissimo. Some epithets, of course, like lily-breasted, need modifying to say lion-chested. A title, goddess of wrynecks and wrens, too great reticulator of the fens. But in an hour your poem qualifies for a state pension or his annual prize, and you will die in bed, which he will not. That silly sausage will be hanged or shot. Though honest Iagos, true to form, will write shame in your margins, toady, hypocrite, true hearts, clear heads, will hear the note of glory and put inverted commas round the story, thinking, oh, sly boots, we shall never know her name or nature. Well, it's better so. For given man by birth, by education, imago Dei who forgot his station, the self-made creature who himself unmakes, the only creature ever made who fakes, with no more nature in his loving smile than in his theories of a natural style. What but tall tales, the luck of verbal playing, can trick his lying nature into saying that love or truth in any serious sense, like orthodoxy, is a reticence. And this is just a lyric called The Willow Wren and the Stare. A starling and a willow wren on a may tree by a weir saw them meet and heard him say, dearest of my dear, more lively than these waters chortling as they leap the dam, my precious goose, my sweetest duck, my precious goose, my white lascivious lamb. With a smile she listened to him, talking to her there. What does he want? Said the willow wren. Much too much. said the stair. Forgive these loves who dwell in me, these brats of greed and fear, the honking, bottom-pinching clown, the snivelling sonneteer, that so between us, even these who till the grave are mine, for all they fall so short of, may, dear heart, be still a sign. With a smile she closed her eyes, silent she lay there. Does he mean what he says? Said the willow wren. Some of it, said the stair. Hark, wild robin winds his horn, and as his notes require, now our laughter-loving spirits must in awe retire, to let their kinder partners, speechless with desire, go in their holy selfishness, unfunny to the fire. Silence smilingly she threw her arms about him there. Is it only that, said the willow wren? It's that as well, said the stair. Waking in her arms, he cried, utterly content, I have heard the high good noises, promoted for an instant, stood upon the shining outskirts of that joy I thank, for you, my dog, and every goody. There on the grass bank, she laughed, he laughed, they laughed together, then they ate and drank. Did he know what he meant, said the willow wren? God only knows, said the stair. Then this is just a little poem about my liking for railroad trains. Self-drivers may curse their luck stuck on newfangled trails, but the good old train will jog to the dogma of its rails, and steam so straight ahead that I cannot be led astray by tempting scenes which occur along any permanent way. Intriguing dales escape into hills of the shape I like, though where I actually put, where a footpath leaves the pike for some steep romantic spot, I should ask what chance there is of at least a $10 check or a family peck of a kiss. But, forcibly held to my tracks, I can safely relax and dream of a love and a livelihood to fit that wood or stream. And what could be greater fun, once one has chosen and paid, than the inexpensive delights of a choice one might have made? Then, this is another lyric. The characters in this were mentioned. Tamina and Pamina, as you know, the hero and the heroine of Mozart's opera, The Magic Flute, who, you remember, they have to go through the trials of fire and water. So the poem is just called The Proof. When rites and melodies begin to alter modes and times, and timid barflies boast aloud of uncommitted crimes, and leading families are proud to dine with their black sheep, what promises, what discipline, if any, will love keep? So roared fire on their right, but Tamino and Pamina walked past its rage, sighing oh, in timeless fermatas of awe and delight. Innocent, yes. Ignorant, no. Down that grim passage. When stinking chaos lifts the latch, and Grotta backward spins, and Helen's nose becomes a beak, and cats and dogs grow chins, and daisies claw and pebbles shriek, and form and color part, what swarming hatreds then will hatch out of love's riven heart? So hissed water on their left, but Pamina and Tamino opposed its spite, with his worship, with her sweetness. Oh, look now, see how they emerge from the cleft. Frightened? No. Happy? Yes. Out into sunlight. Ma'am, this is a poem about the dangers of arithmetic. The kingdom of number is all boundaries which may be beautiful and must be true. To ask if it is big or small proclaims one the sort of lover who should stick to faces. Lovers of small numbers go benignly potty, believe all tales are 13 chapters long, have animal doubles, carry pentagrams, are Millerites, Baconians, flat earth men. Lovers of big numbers go horribly mad, would have the Swiss abolished, all of us well-purged, somatotyped, baptized, taught baseball. They empty bars, spoil parties, run for Congress. True, between faces, almost any number might come in handy, and one is always real. But which could any face call good? But calling infinity a number does not make it one. Another lyric. As I listened from a beach chair in the shade to all the noises that my garden made, it seemed to me only proper that words should be withheld from vegetables and birds. A robin with no Christian name ran through the robin anthem, which was all it knew, and rustling flowers for some third party waited to say which pairs, if any, should get mated. Not one of them was capable of lying. There was not one which knew that it was dying, or could have, with a rhythm or a rhyme, assumed responsibility for time. Let them leave language to their lonely betters, who count some days and long for certain letters. We too make noises when we laugh or weep. Words are for those with promises to keep. And the last in this case, and I'll break for a moment, is called Ode to Gaia. Gaia is the one of the names for the Earth Mother. From this new culture of the air, we finally see, far shining in excellence, what our mother, the nicest daughter of chaos, would admire could she look in a glass, and what in her eyes is natural. It is the old grand style of gesture we watch, as heavy with cold the top waters of all her northern seas take their vernal plunge. And suddenly her desolations, salt as blood, prolix yet terse, are glamorously carpeted with great swatches of plankton, delicious spreads of nourishment. While in her realm of solids, lively dots expand, companionship becomes an unstayed passion, and leaves by the mile hide tons of pied pebbles that will soon be birds. Now that we know how she looks, she seems more mysterious than when in her partibus infidelibus we painted sizzling dragons or wizards reading upside down, but less approachable. One doubts if she knows, but less approachable. Where she joins girls' year lakes to birds' foot deltas with lead blue squiggles, she makes surely a value judgment of pure things, water is the best. But how does she rank wheelwrights? One doubts if she knows which subspecies of folly is peculiar to those pretty molehills, where on that pocket handkerchief of a plane the the syntax changes. Peering down sleepily at the crenellated shore, the tired old diplomat becomes embarrassed. Should he smile for our great good ally, scowl at that vast and detestable empire, or choose the sneer reserved for certain southern countries whose status and moral climate we have no desire, sir, to emulate? But why we should feel neglected on mountain drives, unpopular in woods, is quite clear. The older lives have no wish to be stood in rows or at right angles. Below, straight as its railroad, cutting diagonally across a positivist republic, two lines of moss show where the Devil's Causeway drew pilgrims 7 gods ago. And on this eve of whispers and tapped telephones before the 9th catastrophe, square cornerstones still distinguish a fortress of the high kings from untutored rock. Tempting to mortals is the fancy of half-concerned gods in the sky, of a bored thunderer who turned from the Troy-centered grief to watch the hippomolgoi drink their milk. And how plausible from his look point. We may well shake a weak fist one day at this vision, but the spell of high places will haunt us long after our jaunt has declined, as soon it must, to the hard ground. Where 6 foot is tall, good manners will ask easy riddles, like, why are all the rowdiest marches and the most venomous iambics composed by lame clergymen? We'll tell no tales that end in worse disaster than that of the tipsy poet who cursed a baby for whom later he came to sigh. So we were taught before the greater engines came and the police that go with them, when the long rivers ran through peace and the holy laws of speech were held in awe even by evil tongues. And manners, maybe, will stand us in better stead down there than the Kantian conscience. From overhead, much harm is discernible. Farms unroofed and harbor works wrecked in the second assault. In the second assault, frank to an ungrieving sky, as still they look. Too many fertilities lie in dread of the tormentor's fondling finger, while in the few that still have poker shops and audiences of one, many are overweight. The pious peasants own this sun, goading their crumpled faces down innocence corrupting roads, dreams of cities where his cows are whores. When the wise wilt in the glare of the shadow, the tough advise tribute, and the large-hearted already talk its gibberish, maybe a last stand in the passes will be made by those whose Valhalla would be hearing verse by Praed or arias by Rossini between 2 entrees by Carré. We hope so. But who on Cupid's coming would dare to bet? More than one world's bane has been scotched before this, yet justice, during his Te Deum, slipped away sighing from the victor's pew. An earth till the end will be herself. She has never been moved except by Amphion, and orators have not improved since misled Athens perished upon Sicilian marble. What, to her, the real one, can our good landscapes be but lies? Those woods where tigers chum with deer and no root dies, that tideless bay where children play bishop on a golden shore. Well, I'll stop, gentlemen. Well, the last lot I want to read is another cycle, which are based on the canonical hours, Well, the church, let's say, it begins with prime, which is 6 in the morning. Then terce is 9, sext is midday, nones is 3 o'clock, vespers is 6, compline is 9, and then it gets round the next morning ready with Lord's. Prime. Simultaneously, as soundlessly, spontaneously, suddenly, as at the vaunt of the dawn, the kind gates of the body fly open to its world beyond, the gates of the mind, the horn gate and the ivory gate, swing to, swing shut, instantaneously quell the nocturnal rummage of its rebellious frond, ill-favored, ill-natured, and second-rate, disenfranchised, widowed, and orphaned by an historical mistake, recalled from the shades to be a seeing being, from absence to be on display, without a name or history I wake, between my body and the day. Holy this moment, wholly in the right, as in complete obedience to the light's laconic outcry, next to the sheet, near as a wall, out there as the mountain's poise of stone. The world is present about, and I know that I am here not alone, but with a world, and rejoice unvexed, for the will has still to claim this adjacent arm as my own, the memory to name me, resume its routine of praise and blame, and smiling to me is this instant, while still the day is intact, and I, the Adam, sinless in our beginning, Adam still previous to any act. I draw breath. That is, of course, to wish, no matter what, to be wise, to be different, to die. And the cost, no matter how, is paradise lost, of course, and myself owing a death. The eager ridge, the steady sea, the flat roofs of the fishing village still asleep in its bunny, though as fresh and sunny still, are not friends but things to have. This ready flesh, no honest equal, but my accomplice now, my assassin to be, and my name stands for my historical share of care for a lying, self-made city, afraid of our living task, the dying which the coming day will ask. Terce. After shaking paws with his dog, whose bark would tell the world that he is always kind, the hangman sets off briskly over the heath. He does not know yet who will be provided to do the high works of justice with. Gently closing the door of his wife's bedroom, today she has one of her headaches, with a sigh the judge descends his marble stair. He does not know by what sentence he will apply on earth the law that rules the stars. And the poet, taking a breather round his garden before starting his eclogue, does not know whose truth he will tell. Sprites of hearth and storeroom, godlings of professional mysteries, the big ones who can annihilate a city, cannot be bothered with this moment. We are left each to his private cult. Now each of us prays to an image of himself. Let me get through the coming day without addressing down from a superior, being worsted in a repartee, or behaving like an ass in front of the girls. Let something exciting happen. Let me find a lucky coin on a sidewalk. Let me hear a new funny story. At this hour, we all might be anyone. It is only our victim who is without a wish, who knows already. That is what we can never forgive. If he knows the answers, then why are we here? Why is there even dust? Knows already that in fact our prayers are heard, that not one of us will slip up. The machinery of this world will function without a hitch. That today, for once, there will be no squabbling on Mount Olympus, no Chthonian mutters of unrest, but no other miracle, knows that by sundown we shall have had a Good Friday. Sixth, you need not see what someone is doing to know if it is his vocation. You have only to watch his eyes. A cook mixing a sauce, a surgeon making a primary incision, a clerk completing a bill of lading, wear the same rapt expression, forgetting themselves in a function. How beautiful it is, that eye on the object look, to ignore the appetitive goddesses, to desert the formidable shrines of Rhea, Diana, Demeter, Aphrodite, to worship instead, to pray instead St. Phocas, St. Barbara, San Sant'Anino, whoever one's patron is, that one may be worthy of their mystery. What a prodigious step to have taken. There should be monuments, there should be odes to the unknown heroes who took it first, to the first flaker of flints who forgot his dinner, the first collector of seashells to remain celibate. Where should we be but for them? Feral still, unhouse-trained, still wandering through forests without a consonant to our names, slaves of Dame Kind, lacking all notion of a city. And at this noon, for this death, there will be no agents. You need not hear what orders he is giving to know if someone has authority. You have only to watch his mouth. When a besieging general sees a city wall breached by his troops, when a bacteriologist realizes in a flash what was wrong with his hypothesis, when, from a glance of the jury, the prosecutor knows the defendant will hang, their lips and the lines around them relax, assuming an expression not of simple pleasure at getting their own sweet way, but of satisfaction at being right, an incarnation of fortitudo justitia nous. You may not like them much, who does? But we owe them basilicas, divas, dictionaries, pastoral verse, the courtesies of the city. Without these judicial mouths, which belong for the most part to very great scoundrels, how squalid existence would be, tethered for life to some hut village, afraid of the local snake or the local four demon, speaking the local patois of some 300 words. Think of the family squabbles and the poison pen. Think of the inbreeding. And at this noon, there would be no authority to command this death. Anywhere you like, somewhere upon broad-chested, life-giving earth, anywhere between her thirst lands and undrinkable ocean, the crowd stands perfectly still, its eyes which seem one, and its mouths which seem infinitely many, expressionless, perfectly blank. The crowd does not see what everyone sees, a boxing match, a train wreck, a battleship being launched, does not wonder, as everyone wonders, who will win, what flag she will fly, how many will be burned alive, is never distracted, as everyone is always distracted, by a barking dog, a smell of fish, a mosquito on a bald head. The crowd sees only one thing, which only the crowd can see, an epiphany of that which does whatever is done. Whatever God a person believes in whatever way he believes, no two were exactly alike. As one of the crowd, he believes and only believes in that in which there's only one way of believing. Few people accept each other, and most will never do anything properly. But the crowd rejects no one. Joining the crowd is the only thing all men can do. Only because of that can we say, All men are our brothers, superior because of that to the social exoskeletons. When have they ever ignored their queens, for one instant stopped work on their provincial cities, to worship the prince of this world, like us, at this noon, on this hill, in the occasion of this dying? No. What we know to be not possible, though time after time foretold by wild hermits, by shaman and sibyl gibbering in their trances, or revealed to a child in some chance rhyme like will and kill, comes to pass before we realize it. We are surprised at the ease and speed of our deed, and uneasy. It is barely 3 mid-afternoon, yet the blood of our sacrifice is already dry on the grass. We are not prepared for silence so sudden, so soon. The day is too hot, too bright, too still, too ever. The dead remains to nothing. What shall we do till nightfall? The wind has dropped, and we have lost our public. The faceless many who always collect when any world is to be wrecked, blown up, burnt down, cracked open, felled, sawn in two, hacked through, torn apart, have all melted away. Not one of these who in the shade of walls and trees lies sprawled now, calmly sleeping, harmless as sheep, can remember why he shouted, or what about so loudly in the sunlight this morning. All, if challenged, would reply, it was a monster with one red eye, a crowd that saw him die, not I. The hangman has gone to wash, the soldiers to eat. We are left alone with our feet. The Madonna with the green woodpecker, the Madonna of the fig tree, the Madonna beside the yellow dam, turn their kind faces from us and our projects under construction, look only in one direction, fix their gaze on our completed work. Pile driver, concrete mixer, crane and pickaxe wait to be used again. But how can we repeat this? Outliving our act, we stand where we are as disregarded as some discarded artifact of our own. Like torn gloves, rusted kettles, abandoned branch lines, worn lopsided grindstones buried in nettles. This mutilated flesh, our victim, explains too nakedly, too well, the spell of the asparagus garden, the aim of our chalk pit game. Stamps, birds' eggs are not the same. Behind the wonder of topaz and sunken lanes, behind the rapture on the spiral stair, we should always now be aware of the deed into which they lead. Under the mock chase and mock capture, the racing and tussling and splashing, the panting and the laughter, be listening for the cry and stillness to follow after. Wherever the sun shines, brooks run, books are written, there will also be this death. Soon cool tramontana will stir the leaves. The shops will reopen at 4. The empty blue bus and the empty pink square fill up and drive off. We have time to misrepresent, excuse, deny, mythify, use this event. While under a hotel bed in prison, down wrong turnings, its meaning waits for our lives. Sooner than we would choose, bread will melt, water will burn, and the great quell begin. Abaddon set up his triple gallows at our 7 gates. Fat Belial make our wives waltz naked. Meanwhile, it would be best to go home, if we have a home. In any case, good to rest. That our dreaming wills may seem to escape this dead calm. Wander instead on knife edges, on black and white squares, across moss bays, velvet boards, over cracks and hillocks, in mazes of string and penitent cones, down granite ramps and damp passages, through gates that will not relatch and doors marked private, pursued by Moors and watched by latent robbers, to hostile villages at the heads of fjords, to dark chateaux where wind sobs in the pine trees and telephones ring inviting trouble, to a room lit by one weak bulb where our double sits writing and does not look up. But while we are thus away, our own wrong flesh may work undisturbed, restoring the order we try to destroy, the rhythm we spoil out of spite. Valves close and open exactly, glands secrete, vessels contract and expand at the right moment, essential fluids flow to renew exhausted cells. Not knowing quite what has happened, but awed by death, like all the creatures now watching this spot. Like the hawk looking down without blinking, the smug hens passing close by in their pecking order, the bug whose view is balked by grass, or the deer who shyly from afar peer through chinks in the forest. Then the next one is Vespers. If the hill overlooking our city has always been known as Adam's grave, only at dusk can you see the recumbent giant, his head turned to the west, his right arm resting forever on Eve's haunch. Can you learn from the way he looks up at the scandalous pair what a citizen really thinks of his citizenship? Just as now you can hear in a drunkard's caterwaul the rebel sorrows crying for parental discipline, in lustful eyes perceive a disconsolate soul, scanning with desperation all passing limbs for some vestige of her faceless angel, who in that long ago, when wishing was a help, mounted her once and vanished. For sun and moon provide conforming masks, but in this hour of civil twilight, all must wear their own faces. And it is now that our two paths cross. Both instantaneously recognizes his antitype, that I am an Arcadian, that he is a utopian. He notes with contempt my Aquarian belly. I note with alarm his scorpion's mouth. He would like to see me cleaning latrines. I would like to see him removed to some other planet. Neither speaks. What experience could we possibly share? Glancing at a lampshade in a store window, I observe it is too hideous for anyone in their senses to buy. He observes it is too expensive for a peasant to buy. Passing a slum child with rickets, I look the other way. He looks the other way if he passes a chubby one. I hope our senators will behave like saints, provided they don't reform me. He hopes they will behave like Baritani Cativi. And when lights burn late in the citadel, I, who have never seen the inside of a police station, am shocked and think, where the city is free as they say, after sundown, all her bureaus will be huge black stones. He, who has been beaten up several times, is not shocked at all, but thinks, one fine night, our boys will be working up there. You can see then why, between my Eden and his New Jerusalem, no treaty is negotiable. In my Eden, a person who dislikes Bellini has the good manners not to get born. In his New Jerusalem, a person who dislikes work will be very sorry he was born. In my Eden, we have a few beam engines, overshot water wheels, saddle tank locomotives, and other beautiful obsolete pieces of machinery to play with. In his Eden, in his New Jerusalem, even chefs will be cucumber cool machine minders. In my Eden, our only source of public information is gossip. In his New Jerusalem, there will be a special daily in simplified spelling for non-verbal type. In my Eden, each observes his compulsive rituals and superstitious taboos, but we have no morals. In his New Jerusalem, the temples will be empty, but all will practice the rational virtues. One reason for his contempt. is that I have only to close my eyes, cross the Arnfoot Bridge to the towpath, to the canal towpath, take the short brick tunnel, and there I stand in Eden again, welcomed back by the crumhorns, dopians, or dooms of jolly miners, and a bob major from the cathedral Romanesque of St. Sophie di Calta. One reason for my alarm is that when he closes his eyes, he arrives not in New Jerusalem, but on some August day of outrage when helicins cavort through ruined drawing rooms and fishwives intervene in the chamber, or some autumn night of delations and noyades when the unrepentant thieves, including me, are sequestered, and those he hates shall hate themselves instead. So, with a glance, we take each other's posture. Already our steps recede, heading incorrigible each towards his kind of meal and evening. Was it, as it must look to any god of crossroads, simply a fortuitous intersection of life paths loyal to different fibs? Or also a rendezvous between accomplices who, in spite of themselves, cannot resist meeting to remind the other, do both at bottom desire truth, of that half of their secret which he would most like to forget, forcing us both for a fraction of a second to remember our victim. But for him, I could forget the blood. But for me, he could forget the innocence, on whose immolation, call him Abel, Remus, whom you will, 'tis one sin offering, Arcadias, Utopias, our dear old bag of a democracy, are alike founded. For without a cement of blood, it must be human, it must be innocent, no secular wall will safely stand. Compline. Now, as desire and the things desired cease to require attention, as seizing its chance, the body escapes section by section to join plants in their chaster peace, which is more to its real taste. Nowadays, its past, its last deed and feeling in, should come the instant of recollection when the whole thing makes sense. It comes, but all I recall are doors banging, two housewives scolding, an old man gobbling, a child's wild look of envy, actions, words that could fit any tale, and I fail to see either plot or meaning. I cannot remember a thing between noon and 3. Nothing is with me now but a sound, a heart's rhythm, a sense of stars leisurely walking around, and both talk a language of motion I can measure but not read. Maybe my heart is confessing her part in what happened to us from noon till 3. The constellations indeed sing of some hilarity beyond all liking and happening. But knowing I neither know what they know, nor what I ought to know, scorning all vain fornications of fancy, now let me, blessing them both for the sweetness of their cassations, accept our separation. A stride from now will take me into dream, leave me without a status among its unwashed tribes of wishes, who have no dances and no jokes, but a magic cult to propitiate what happens from noon till 3, odd rites which they hide from me. Should I chance, say, on yews and an oak wood, insulting a white deer, bribes nor threats will get them to blab, and then, past untruth is one step to nothing. For the end, for me as for cities, is total absence. What comes to be must go back into non-being, for the sake of the equity, the rhythm past measure or comprehending. Can poets, can men in television be saved? It is not easy to believe in unknowable justice or pray in the name of a love whose name once forgotten. Libera me, Libera C, dear C, and all poor SOBs who never do anything properly. Spare us in the youngest day when all are shaken awake. Facts are facts, and I shall know exactly what happened today from noon till 3, that we too may come to the picnic with nothing to hide. Join the dance as it moves in perichoresis, turns about the abiding tree. Then the last one, which is very short, is called Lords. Among the leaves the small birds sing, the crow of the cock commands a waking, in solitude for company. Bright shines the sun on creatures mortal, men of their neighbors become sensible, in solitude for company. The crow of the cock commands a waking, already the mass bell goes dong-ding, in solitude for company. Men of their neighbors become sensible. God bless the realm, God bless the people, in solitude for company. Already the mass bell goes dong-ding, the dripping mill wheel is again turning, in solitude for company. God bless the realm, God bless the people, God bless this green world temporal, in solitude for company. The dripping mill wheel is again turning. Among the leaves the small birds sing, in solitude for company. Thank you.
Thanks for listening. 92nd Street Y Unterberg Poetry Center webcasts and access to our archive are made possible by the generous support of listeners like you. For more information on 92nd Street Y and all our programs, please visit us on the web at 92y.org. This program is copyright 1955 by 92nd Street Y.